Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia here, and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup. Playoffs Week 1 preview. So, we have found the two teams who will be joining the top 6 in the playoffs, and so it's time for the main event. Yes, it's time to take a look ahead at the Overwatch League 2019 playoffs. So there are 8 teams in this year's playoffs. The top 6 finishers in the league standings, who are the Vancouver Titans, the San Francisco Shurk, the New York Excelsior, the Hangzhou Spark, and the LA Gladiators, alongside the Atlanta Reign. They will be joined by the two winners of the play-ins, who we found out last week were the London Spitfire and the Seoul Dynasty. These two teams will have the most difficult draws, and the matches are decided by seeding in the final season standings. The map pool is exactly the same as what we saw in the play-ins last week, and the same goes for the patch that the teams will be playing on. An early indication of the meta last week is that we will see a lot of Orisa, Sigma comps, and in terms of DPS we are seeing a lot of Doomfist and Pharah, which will benefit some teams more than others. For example, the Vancouver Titans DPS lineup could have some issues here, as they rely a lot on Hangzhou to be their Doomfist and their Pharah player. And if they need both at the same time, do they have a player that can pick up one of those roles and play it to the skill level that they need? One option would be to play Hureg on Pharah, but the question is, can he play the Pharah to the level needed for the Titans? Only time will tell. Obviously, one of the teams that have not played yet in this off-season could show us something new in terms of the meta that could dominate, but we will just have to wait and see. Early indications in scrims are that the London Spitfire are doing very well, but as we saw in the play-ins, things can change and none of these games will be easy for anyone. That is the nature of the playoffs. However, in the playoffs, the format changes slightly from the previous year and the play-ins. The playoffs are going to be played in a double elimination bracket. What this means is that everyone will start in the first bracket in the quarterfinals, the winners will go through to the winners bracket semi-finals. The losers will drop to the losers bracket. In essence, there is a second chance if you lose a game. The same goes for the semi-finals. The winners move on to the winners bracket final, the losers will drop into the losers bracket semi-finals. This goes on throughout the competition until the grand final, which will be the winner of the winners bracket versus the winner of the losers bracket. Each game will be the first of 4 maps, meaning you can have some crazy games like we saw in the playoffs where you could get 8 maps or more if the game is extremely close. This would mean matches that go on for 3 hours or longer if they really do go the distance. This will also be a farewell to a big part of the Overwatch League, the Blizzard Arena. These will be the last games that will be played there before we go to a homestand format in the 2020 season. So from me, farewell to that big, amazing screen and the studio that has been home to some of the greatest esports moments over the past 2 years, and on to an exciting future, home and away. So enough about the format and the formalities, let's get on to the fixtures we know we are going to be seeing in the first part of this weekend. Let's be clear here, there are no easy games. I expect all of these games to be fairly close, and I wouldn't be surprised for all of the teams to at least pick up one map from each game, meaning no sweeps. But hey, we never know what we're going to see. We will start off obviously with the quarterfinals of the winners bracket, as this is where all teams will enter the playoffs. The first game we will see will be the top seed in the competition, the Vancouver Titans, versus the bottom seed, the Seoul Dynasty. This will take place on Friday the 6th of September at midnight British Summer Time or 1 AM in Europe. The Vancouver Titans will have the test of adjusting to a new meta for the first time in a competitive game, whereas Seoul have been able to test their new strats in the play-ins. This does also mean that the Titans have had a sneak preview as to what the Dynasty might play, which might provide them with a bit of an advantage. I think this matchup will heavily depend on how the Titans adjust to the new meta and the question on who they will play in the DPS slots. If they want to play that Pharah and that Doomfist at the same time, both heroes who in the past have been left to Hangzhou to play, but obviously he cannot play 2 slots at once, no matter how good he is. Despite the question marks I put over the Titans, I still think they will have enough to see off the Dynasty, but I do think that Seoul can put up a good fight against the top seed here, and I just think they might be lacking that clutchness in fights that can to cause an upset here. The next game, to also taking place on the Friday, will be the LA Gladiators taking on the Hangzhou Spark. This is going to be a real close one, and it is almost impossible to call. It will be at 3 AM British Summer Time or 4 AM in Europe, which is a shame because I'd really like to watch this one live. This one will be heavily impacted depending on who adjusts to the meta quicker and better. Hangzhou Spark were slow to adjust to the new meta in Stage 4 when Triple 2 was introduced, and if they were to do the same thing in the playoffs, then they would ultimately come up short. However, the Gladiators looked fairly good when adjusting in Stage 4, and so I have less worry around their ability to adjust. The thing here is that both of these teams have had time since Stage 4 to scrim a lot and work things out. Also, they do not have any prior stage performances in this meta to make any judgments, unlike the previous game for the Titans. I worry about the weakened DPS line for the Spark since the Crystal Saga, but this did clear itself up towards the end of last stage, but on paper I think the DPS for the Gladiators are better. I think this is balanced out with a strong support and tank line for the Spark though, making this one so difficult to call. I will go for a Gladiators win here, but it will be so close. We move on to the next day of fixtures now. This will be on Saturday the 7th of September. The first game will be at midnight British Summer Time, and it will be a really interesting one. London Spitfire taking on the New York Excelsior. We did not get to see this at last year's playoffs due to the teams being on the other side of the bracket from each other, and the NYXL being knocked out by the Philadelphia Fusion in the semi-finals. This fixture has a lot of history in the league and is somewhat of a grudge match. New York have always been the dominant team in the regular season, but when it comes to the knockout stages, the questions start to be asked for New York, as their record is not that brilliant. In stages 1 and 3 of this season, they have fallen at the first hurdle when it comes to the stage playoffs, and have not reached the final this year, compared to last year when they reached every single stage playoff final and won 2 of them. Now, arguably, the outlook is bleaker for the Spitfire. You have to go back to the stage 2 for their last appearance in the stage playoffs, and all the way back to stage 1 of the inaugural season for their last stage title. All of that is irrelevant for the Spitfire though, as they are the only team in the league with the experience of winning the playoffs and the grand final. Whether this will help them or not, only time will tell. The NYXL will have the advantage of looking at the performance of the Spitfire in the play-ins, and although London looked incredibly good early on against the Dragons did come back into the match as time went on, and the end of the match couldn't have been much closer. The question is, can the clutch that London showed in the inaugural season come back and see them through here, because I think they're going to need it. For the NYXL, it's all about overcoming demons. They fell at the first hurdle last year in spectacular fashion against the Philadelphia Fusion, but surely they couldn't fall in the same way again, and arguably the draw is harder this season. Only time will tell for this fixture, but I expect it to be close, but I can't imagine the NYXL slipping up like they did last year, so I think they will squeeze past the Spitfire here and send our holders home. The last known fixture for this week will be at 3 AM on September the 7th, and it will be our 2 remaining teams, the Atlanta Reign taking on the San Francisco Shock. Atlanta Reign were the breakthrough team in Stage 4, storming up the standings and taking that top 6 spot away from the London Spitfire. The San Francisco Shock have been one of the most consistent teams all season, constantly in that top 3 and crushing a lot of the smaller teams in the league. Also, they have been able to adjust to every meta this season very well. I honestly think the adaptation of the Shock is the best in the league, as even the other 2 top 3 teams, the NYXL and Vancouver, have had some issues when adjusting to a new meta. Atlanta looked incredibly good in Stage 4 and have been able to take 2 matches off the NYXL this season, which ultimately proved very important come the end of this campaign. The Reign have only played the Shock once this season, and that ended in a 3-2 win for the Shock in Stage 3, so we don't have much data to work from here as they've only met in the league once. I would back the Shock to get a win here, as I think their consistency and sheer skill will see them come out on top, but if there is any team in this competition that could pull off an upset here, it would be the Atlanta Reign, and I wouldn't put it beyond them to cause a shock. Yeah, I'm ashamed of that one as well. So those are all of the fixtures that we know the teams for this week will be facing, but there will also be a further 4 fixtures on the Sunday. At 2 AM and 5 AM British Summer Time, which is 3 AM and 6 AM in Europe, we will get the first 2 fixtures in the losers bracket, which will be comprised of the teams who lost their first games. The first game will be the losers of Friday's games facing each other, and the second game will be the losers of the Saturday games facing each other. Obviously, I can't make any predictions on games where I don't know which teams will be playing, but these games will be make or break for those teams, because the losers of these games will be going home. The next 2 games will take place at 8 PM and 11 PM British Summer Time, that's 9 PM and midnight in Europe. These games will be the semi-finals of the winners bracket. This will tell us who will be going down to the losers bracket to face the winners of the games in round 1 of the losers bracket, and who will be going forward to face each other in the winners bracket final for a place in that grand final. That is where we will end this week, and I know it's pretty confusing. To be quite honest, explaining going down to the losers bracket is just... it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and I hope I haven't made it too confusing. I've just gone off script, by the way, so that's great. You can tell when I go off script, because I get a bit off. Anyway, I will be back for the results of this first week of the playoffs, and then we will have a second preview video ahead of week 2 of the playoffs, where we will find out who will be going to the grand finals at the end of September. But I am extremely looking forward to this week's fixtures, as there should be incredible Overwatch on show, and you won't want to miss it. And if last week is anything to go by, it could be some pretty long broadcasts at the Blizzard Arena. Anyway, for now, I will leave it here. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you then.